it was a solid victory. The Raiders always look to play Kansas City tough, but you would have thought that it might have been a different result, that Kansas City would put them away, and the Chiefs just simply do not accomplish that feat this year. They toy with these teams, kind of like a cat out there batting things back and forth. Hey, come on, play with us. Give us a game here. It was a solid win. They were never threatened at all, and you didn't feel like they were threatened. And I think that same thing is in vogue for tonight's game, too, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Although I do have personally some very slight trepidations about this because the Buccaneers are a passing team. Baker Mayfield can throw. He doesn't have a whole bevy of receivers to throw to, but you've heard this before, guys. They are professional athletes.
And here's our other cliche, too. Trap game. Watch out. Let's continue to talk about last week's game, though, and we'll go to Alec. Alec, I'm sorry, were the Steelers on at the same time as the Chiefs?
No, Steelers were they were Monday Night Football. They played a week ago.
So did you watch any of the game?
I did not watch any of the game.
Okay,
because
so we'll just skip over you and go right to Josh. Josh, you watched the game, right?
I did. I watched the game. And if you remember, I told you I told you it would be a close one, and they wouldn't cover the spread. And that's exactly what they did. It was a close game, and they didn't cover the spread. Now, I agree with you, Ned. It didn't seem like the Chiefs were in any danger of losing that game. I just think that they didn't. They do not steamroll teams at all. They play their game. They score when they have to score, and then they let the defense take over, and the defense is stellar. And if I was on the defense, I'd be like, hey, it'd be nice if we were playing with a 30-point lead every once in a while. But that's just not how the Chiefs are playing this year.
I mean, what sort of team over the years that you've seen in the NFL, Ned, would you compare the Chiefs this year, this iteration of the Chiefs to? What another team that comes to mind when you think about them?
I can't specify a single period of time, but the New England Patriots. They play very much like them. They're a control team that's always in charge. They're never – this is the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick era, of course. And they just are a team that was never really in any trouble. They played just well enough to beat you, which they did in all games. And that was the method that they tried. It's the method the Chiefs are using. They know they can get away with it. They don't have to take any risks. Their defense is going to take care of a lot of that. It's defense that wins for the Chiefs, and defense that gives the offensive team a little room to breathe, so to speak, so they don't have to go out and take a great deal of chances.
All right, Alec, we're coming back to you. Okay,
Thanks.
Sorry we skipped over.
It hurt my feelings a little, but
all right,
I'll forgive you guys.
We'll make it up to you. We promise. We'll let you do a whole segment on the Steelers.
Oh, the fan base will love it.
So DeAndre Hopkins has worked out right away for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, it was a big deal that they made that trade. I think they wanted to make a statement with that trade because there were some other moves that were made in the week prior. But here the Chiefs are. They've got perhaps the oldest receiver that was on the market, but right away, big impact.
Yeah, and, that's exactly why you bring a guy like in there. He's at this point in his career, he might be a little more name recognition than actual field production. DeAndre Hopkins has had a sensational career, but it's been a while since he's been the DeAndre Hopkins that comes to mind in those Houston days. But he can do a lot of things well, and especially on a team that's lost Rashee Rice, and then Juju has one blow-up game, and then he's been dealing with an injury. So you get a guy who's kind of a similar mold right now, big body guy, knows how to make those tough catches, and is just another good target for Mahomes. So he's going to help this offense out. He's only going to get more comfortable. Last week was very much he's just introducing himself to all his teammates still. So they need to work him in. They probably had a small package of plays that he got to run. So
they
now
said that he had seen about half of their package at that point.
So now he gets another week of practice, another week of reps. So you should just see him get integrated more and more into the offense. But going back to what Ned said, the offense isn't the winning factor right now. It's the defense. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't watch the game last week is because if you're not a Chiefs fan, Raiders versus Chiefs just sounds boring on paper because I'm like, well, what's going to happen? It's going to be a 5 to 10 point game. The Raiders are going to keep it sneakily close, and just when you think they might get back into it, Kansas City is going to force a turnover, and I swear I've seen that happen about 100 times in the past 5 years, it feels like. It's just what Kansas City does. They make the play when they need it. And it's been the defense here recently. I think the offense can still put up big production, but I think teams have just come to accept that they don't want track meets with Kansas City anymore, and they will do whatever it takes to make long, slow drives be how Kansas City scores, which they can do, but it keeps games tight. And so the defense has had to live up, and they consistently do.
What Alex said, boiling it all down, is what we decided several years ago on the show. The way you beat Kansas City is keep them off the field. Keep that offense out of there, keep them on the bench, and you do that by basically a running attack. You run the clock, and you just maintain possession. And you do not, that's a very good point, do not want to get into a track meet with them because they will beat you then and beat you like a drum.
Chiefs also made a move, too, this last week to acquire a linebacker to fill in where they were a little concerned. I know Drew Tranquil will play tonight, but they were a little bit concerned about his health. But they've added somebody to that lineup. Who is it?
Uche, who comes over and is a good player. He came over, I think,
New England.
From the New England Patriots, where he was playing a little bit. He hadn't played a whole lot this season. He missed a couple of games because of an injury, but he is very quick, and that's what the Chiefs base their defense on is lightning speed. And he's an edge rusher. He can come in and create more disturbance in the backfield. That's why I don't think Tampa Bay has much of a task tonight, because Mayfield, while he is a good quarterback and can throw, does he have any targets, number one? And how can he react to the pressure of these guys coming in? And there will be plenty of that.
Josh, perhaps the biggest thing the Chiefs have done so far in this season that's been riddled with injuries is that Kareem Hunt is back with the Chiefs, and you were a guy that was kind of a naysayer for that, but you've changed your tune.
I was, having conversations with Mike and other Chiefs fans, and I was reluctant for him to come back, but Kareem Hunt is a stellar running back, and he runs hard and he gets a lot of yards. I mean, when he's running the ball, he not only does he have a good amount of strength to break through the line, but he has elusiveness too. And the combination of those two is making it to where I don't know what he's averaging per carry, but it's got to be 5 or 6 yards a carry, I would think.
There was an article that came out today dealing with that exact circumstance. They say, what are the Chiefs going to do when Pacheco comes back? There's no place to play him. They are different runners, different style runners. Yeah. And I must admit to you, I like the way that Hunt runs. He's a power runner, maybe not the power that Pacheco has, but it's a different style altogether.
And not as much tread on the tires. When he left Kansas City and went to Cleveland, he was the clear and obvious number 2 to Nick Chubb, who's coming off a knee injury of his own, but might be the best pure runner in all of football when he's healthy. So in those years in Cleveland, he was the spell back. He was the receiving back. He was, he doesn't have the amount of carries that often these young running backs get put on them, like he was getting when he was first in Kansas City. So even though he's been around for a little bit, he doesn't have the wear and tear that you might see. Yeah. So he's been a great fit for Kansas City. Has been what they've needed. I do think if Pacheco comes back healthy, then that's Pacheco's job. He's earned that. I think he's the more explosive of the two players as well. But Kareem Hunt can handle 20-plus carries a game in the meantime.
You talk about the mileage on these runners, and everybody knows that is the case. Their lifespan's about, 4 years, 4.5 years, somewhere around there. But did you see Henry yesterday, the Baltimore Ravens? He got a handoff about the 10-yard line, second and goal or something like that, got the handoff from Lamar Jackson, and he knocked over 2 of the defenders in going in for the touchdown. And here's a guy who's been around. Of course, he has that Alabama flavor about him.
He's also huge. I mean, he's bigger than most running backs. Oh, yeah. And that's what has helped Travis Henry, is that his size has prevented him from getting those injuries that a lot of running backs get just because they're not as big as him. I mean, he punishes people when he hits them.
This is Ned Talk, your local live sports talk show. Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott, Josh Roberts, Joe Westen hanging around talking about sports, getting you up to the Chiefs pregame show, which starts at 6 o'clock. I think you'd almost call it a stable of running backs that the Chiefs have. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because even without Pacheco, each guy in that group brings something different to the table. I mean, you've got Kareem Hunt. He is a what you would call a tried and true running back, a guy you hand the ball off to. He can go between the tackles. He can break outside. Then you look at Samaje Perine, and he's a guy that's a good pass catcher. The same with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then Carson Steele brings something different. He runs very similar to Pacheco. He's a very hard runner.
Yeah.
Well, he fumbles. Yeah, he does fumble.
And there you see a key reason why Mahomes does not have the passing yardage that he's had in the past. He does not have to. He can rely on these guys. It's a different style attack. NFL is obviously not ready for it. The team is only 7-0 on the year, and they're doing it in conventional fashion. It's really admirable.
Well, when you were asking earlier, Joe, this team does remind me of that Baltimore Ravens team that won the Super Bowl with Dilfer and Ray Lewis, because Ray Lewis told their offense, get us 10 points and we're going to win this game for you.
Well, you've got to harken back to some of Alex's fairate teams, the Steelers.
Yeah.
Well, Steelers of the 70s. Or
the Steelers of the 70s were unbelievable. They shut O.J. Simpson down.
Or even my Steelers back in the late 2000s to early 2010s. That was defense driven. That offense was young, and the defense said, "Oh well, if you can just keep it close, we'll be the." It was like, "Don't worry, we can make it happen." And that's exactly what Kansas City they've got Mahomes, and it's still weird to look at. And when you look at his numbers and you look at his performance, and if this was your first year ever watching football, you'd be like, "This guy,
yeah,
this is the 2-time MVP, 3-time Super Bowl winning. Like, he looks fine. He looks like he's managing the game."
Right.
But again, 7-0. This is all you need. It's really hard if you put it all in your quarterback and make them drop back and throw 60 times a game. You're probably going to lose more of those than you win, because that's just hard to do. So take that pressure off. Even guys like Mahomes need that pressure relieved, run the ball, and keep your defense in the game, and it's working. It's working
You're
great.
going to win.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you guys this as we continue our conversation here. At this point of the season, we're midway through the season, and we've done this all the way through the season of the show. We've kind of picked around the edges with the Chiefs. And, Ned, you're exactly right. They're 7-0. They have the best record in the NFL. It's not pretty, but they're winning, and that's ultimately how a team's judged. What needs to be fixed going forward?
In my opinion, nothing. Now, having said that, they may have a very slight weakness in their defensive backfield. They have young kids. They are very quick and skilled and motivated. But if there is a weakness on the team, that's where it would be, in that the defensive backfield. And a good passer might be able to exploit that for a little while, but hey, certainly not for the whole game. I don't foresee they need to fix anything.
What about you, Alec?
Not so much address from like any kind of outside source, but just some of these turnovers that are happening they're happening in situations where they can overcome, but eventually it's not. So I don't know how. I'm not a coach. I don't know how you coach it up, but Mahomes is getting a lot of balls tipped at the line, and those are turning into interceptions. And eventually you're going to be playing a Baltimore or someone like that again, and it's going to happen at the wrong time. And so that's what I think needs to get cleaned up. Just if you can take those turnovers down a little bit, they'll be nigh unbeatable.
I think he's thrown an interception in every game this season so far.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
What about you, Josh?
I haven't thrown a single one.
Well, I would agree with that. I think the
you get paid a lot less than he is.
Don't remind me.
The turnovers are about the only thing that I worry about on offense. And you know what's interesting is what Ned says about defense. Their defensive backfield is good, but compared to the rest of their defense, that is their weak point. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a weak point overall, but it is the weakest point of their defense. Those guys are still really good, but there is an opportunity there, I think, for some teams to maybe exploit that, but they haven't really done it too much. But, yeah, my biggest concern is the turnovers, because that is what is keeping other teams in these games and making it more of a nail-biter than it needs to be.
Tomorrow's trade deadline for the NFL, and the two stories that I read this week about the Chiefs said that they were looking, if another quality wide receiver fell in their lap, they would make that trade. And I know from the other story that I read that the defensive coaches have gone and said, get us a young, fast cornerback. I think that might be hard to find. But there are some teams out there right now, Ned, that probably should have a fire sale, and one of them the team they played last week, and that's the Raiders.
Yeah, but again, you only have 24 hours to think about that, and you have the salary cap to worry about too, and the Chiefs are right on the borderline on theirs, so you go over that and not expect to get fined, and no team in the NFL has ever gone over the salary cap. So that does have to be considered. But by the same token, I don't think they need to make any changes at all. They're fine the way they are. They're skilled players, and I would be very reluctant to make any change in the chemistry that they have right now.
Alec, do you see any big moves being made between now and tomorrow for the Chiefs or for anybody?
For Chiefs, I personally don't. They went and added Uche out of New England. There's your pass rusher. Every team could use more pass rush. I don't care who you are. Mm-hmm. And then they went and added DeAndre Hopkins. They got a receiver. So I think they've made the moves. I will be curious to see if anyone out of New Orleans gets moved, because they just fired their head coach today, and a team that started 2-0, scored over 40 points in the first 2 games, hasn't won a game since.
Nope.
So that team's in trouble. So there's a seller. They have a young corner, and I've been sitting here trying to rack my brain on his name this whole time, and it has escaped me. But contract might keep him away. There's a move. There's still some wide receivers out there on the market. I know Deontay Johnson just went to Baltimore. I guess my Steelers were even inquiring about Christian Kirk from Jacksonville, and then he broke his collarbone. So there's always... Everyone's going to be looking for depth, but I don't know if you have anyone that's going to be full-on sell mode. It's hard to do in the NFL with the salary cap. It's hard to offload too much stuff because the contenders usually are pushing that salary cap so hard they just can't take on these big superstars.
That's true.
A team that's disappointing, it's like, would you like to go add info? Just this isn't what they need, but do you want Alvin Kamara from New Orleans because they're doing bad? Sure, but you can't.
Can't afford it.
None of these contenders can afford it, so they're not going to go get them.
Well, Jets, here's a list of teams that should be in fire sale mode right now. Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville, Tennessee, the Raiders. So there's a lot of talk about Max Crosby. I don't think that'll happen. Cowboys, Giants, and Panthers, and the Saints. All those teams probably are looking to make moves right now. So there's a lot of sellers out there at this time.
Right, but is the money there?
Yeah, I think that what you guys are talking about is going to be the determining factor. Is most of the teams that could use those players probably don't have enough salary cap to afford them.
And the ones you can't afford, there's a reason those teams are all 2-7 or so. And if you're Kansas City, you probably don't need those guys. You've got your own set up.
Yeah, I would admit that they're probably bargain basement shopping right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chiefs add a player here that's not a household name that you're not going to go, oh, they got such and such from such and such. It'll be more like, who's that guy? I'm going to have to look him up to find out more information about him. But as you said, Ned, one of the reasons why they're here at this point is depth.
Oh, yeah.
And adding some players maybe for depth as the trade deadline kind of plays itself out here. It's going to be interesting to see if these teams that have 2 or 3 wins, if they think they can turn their season around at this point at all. I mean, you're looking at the AFC East, and almost every team in that division is a seller right now.
Like Buffalo at top. New York has a pulse. That's a nice way to put it. Buffalo's way on top. Miami and New England are almost certainly out of it. The AFC South, Houston's come down a little bit, so that the Colts are still alive there. But Tennessee and Jacksonville, probably gone. Cleveland's buried itself. Cincinnati's in the same position as New York, I think. There's a pulse. They've got the talent. AFC West, the Broncos are sneakily putting together an okay year. I know they just got trounced yesterday, but they were 5-3 going into that game.
I'll tell you, a team that's dangerous too, as far as record and playoffs is concerned, is Los Angeles, the Chargers.
Yep.
Well, I watched Detroit play yesterday for a little bit, and that team is very impressive.
They're great.
They've got a very good quarterback. Jared Goff is a very good quarterback. They've got some good receivers. Their defense is good, and that running back is awesome. I mean, that's a team. I think you may be right, Josh, that I think at least they may be the Chiefs' opponent in the Super Bowl this year. So
yeah.
We'll see how all that plays out.
Good drama.
When we come back, we'll talk about tonight's game as the Chiefs take on the Buccaneers of Monday Night Football.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
We're 40 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show. Mitch Holtis, Dana Hughes, Dan Israel, Art Haynes, and the whole crew. They'll be coming to you for the game tonight. Monday Night Football. Always something special about Monday Night Football, right, Ned?
Well, always is. And when you're chosen for that, well, you're chosen for a reason, because you're good. The network people know fully well that the public wants to see a good team, and they get their opportunity with the Chiefs. That's why the Chiefs, what did we figure on how many noontime games they have in Kansas City this year? They have one next week. And then what is it, maybe two more or something like that?
They have three more and a possibility of a fourth. So we'll see. Let me ask you this. I think this team that they're playing tonight, and you've said the magic T word before, the trap game. The Buccaneers are 4-4. They're a bit confounding because they've had some really good moments during the course of the season, and they've had some really bad moments. And I think the same could be said for their quarterback, Baker Mayfield.
He didn't win the Heisman Trophy by sitting around doing nothing at Oklahoma. The guy can play. He's a solid quarterback, but how well does he react to intense pressure? And he will see that intense pressure. Furthermore, he doesn't have his two top receivers. And the two backup receivers are also injured with hamstring problems of some sort. They'll play. They'll get in there. But are they at full speed? Are they deceptive? Are they to the point where Mayfield can pick them out and throw to a target and those guys are there? Well, again, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they would be there. But again, you get into a backup situation and you're always very tenuous with what's going to happen. Their offensive scheme is good. It is not great. Their defensive team is not only not good, they're not only not great, but they're not good either. The Chiefs should be able to, I don't want to say score at will, but they'll be able to move the ball and put points on the board. That's why the game does not intrigue me all that much.
Tampa Bay, well, you're not supposed to say things like that. You're supposed to say, I'm very intrigued by this game tonight. Because
no, I'm not.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Oh, Ned, you're a little too honest, I think, these days. Okay, what do you think, Alec? Because, Tampa Bay, they have a lot to play for in this game because they're still in play in the NFC South. They're about a game back of the Atlanta Falcons, so they're playing not really so much the opponent. I mean, yes, they're playing the Chiefs, but they're also playing because they've got something to play for. And I'm not saying the Chiefs don't, but you know what I mean? They're a motivated team coming into this game.
Well, they really need it because they're 4-4, and half those losses are to those Atlanta Falcons. They've already played Atlanta twice, and they've already lost to Atlanta twice.
I didn't realize that.
If you're looking up at your division leader and they've beat you twice already, you have no opportunities left to track them down on your own. You have to just hope that someone else can do that for you. So they do have a lot to play for. It is a shame on this big primetime game we're getting Tampa Bay, missing the likes of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, because this is a team that's defense is struggling, but when they're healthy, can put up points with the best of them, and they were doing so because Mike Evans is arguably the most underrated player of the past decade in the NFL. Just nothing but 1,000-yard seasons and double-digit touchdowns, ho-hum, just doing his thing. And Chris Godwin was having a career year when his injury happened. So Baker's found himself a home. I think Cleveland gave up on him a little too early, and they're getting what they deserve for moving off of him right now. But he's found a good home, and he had good weapons that are unfortunately gone. So it's on paper, this is a good matchup for Kansas City because their offense is hampered, and that's their strong suit. Their defense has been bad, and you should be able to move on them. If Kansas City can put up in the 20s tonight, I think they're already thinking to themselves that should be enough.
Is there some under-the-radar guy there at Tampa Bay that we should watch? You're the guy that knows the rosters of all of us here, but is there somebody you can think of that you go?
Past those two on the receiving depth chart, it gets dicey to the point where I'm not. They've got the running backs, and they've got Rashad White, and they've got Bucky Irving. Rookie Bucky Irving has looked pretty good, but he's had his own injury issues he's been dealing with. So I have to imagine, to alleviate the pass game that's going to be a little off because of the top receivers, they're going to want to try and run the football. And Tampa Bay has a good offensive line. Kansas City has a really good defensive line, so you can't just line up and run against them. And, Steve Spagnuolo is not going to make it easy with these exotic blitz packages. Tampa Bay is going to do exactly what you've seen everyone else do. They're going to try and slow it down. They're going to keep their safeties back. They're going to make Kansas City have 8 to 12 play drives to score touchdowns. And if Kansas City might get 4 or 5 of those if Tampa Bay's offense can't go anywhere.
All right.
They do have the Shepard kid who is an Oklahoma Sooner and probably played quite a bit with Mayfield. So there is some affinity between those two, but one combination is certainly not going to be enough to overcome any deficiencies they've had otherwise.
Josh?
I'll tell you what the determining factor is. Whether or not Baker Mayfield can use his Zen nicotine pouches. Because when he was using those, he was throwing nothing but touchdowns. And when they told him he couldn't use them anymore, he started throwing interceptions again. So he's going to have to smoke a pack before the game starts and then smoke another pack at halftime to get that nicotine
Get
fix.
the Lynn Dawson going.
Oh, yeah, get the Lynn Dawson
get the Lenny going. Let me get your opinion on this, Josh, about Baker Mayfield, because it seems like Baker Mayfield is this I don't know really how to describe him, because when he came to the NFL, I think he got undersold a little bit, and there was all this talk about Baker Mayfield's attitude, and it didn't play well where he was at, and then he was off to the Browns, and then it was Baker Mayfield, the Reclamation Project, and I think he played for the Rams mixed in there somewhere too.
He had a brief stop with the Rams, not last season but the year before, and he'd been there for like 3 days and won a game for him.
He's like the football equivalent of Brocky at this point. He's just like the comeback
Jeff George. He's the new Jeff George. He's going to play for like 14 different teams in his career. I don't know. It's weird because he was stellar at Oklahoma. And they called him Baker the touchdown maker. But then, the NFL's a different story. Everybody that you play in the NFL was the best player on their college team, just like you. So it's a totally different animal. And I think maybe he was in his own head, and that got him in trouble. And then he got humbled, and he played well again. And then maybe he got a big head again. I don't know. Maybe the guy's got some ego problems. But I think Tampa Bay's a good fit for him. He's played well off and on, but like you guys have said, how much can you expect out of a quarterback when he has nobody to throw the ball to? When your top 4 receivers are all hurt, you're throwing to running backs out of the backfield, and that's a lot easier for defenses to cover.
Let me ask the two of you this question. I'll start with Alec. Are you intrigued by this game tonight?
Intrigued. I want to see how Baker handles it. I think Baker Mayfield gets a little bit of a bad rap. He had an electric personality at Oklahoma, kind of akin to what Johnny Manziel was bringing, just with his off the field stuff was just more tame. And, add him to the laundry list of quarterbacks that have been signed to Cleveland, and they've said, "Can you save us?" And the answer is no, because you can't save Cleveland. There's just no saving it. There's just no saving it. So and if anything, he led them to their first playoff win in decades. And then they said, "Well, what have you done for us lately?" And he said, "More than anybody else." And they said, "Not good enough." and they moved on from him. So I think he has good NFL quarterback potential. And I would be very curious to see, though, the intrigue tonight is if Kansas City's looking at an inferior team, inferior in quotes. Do they play down to that, or do they play up for it? Because if it ends up being another one-score game and they look ugly, you got to think this team's kind of coasting on their laurels, just knowing they can get away with it.
Josh, are you intrigued by this game?
I am always intrigued to watch the Chiefs because I love good defense.
Okay.
And so I want to see a dominating performance by the Chiefs defense, and then however it plays out, it plays out. Like I said, Baker Mayfield's a conundrum because he's a talented guy that isn't playing well, and he doesn't have much to play with, and he doesn't have his Zen nicotine patches. So.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, how did that conversation go when they said to Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, "We're going to let you go, and we're going to replace you with a guy that had a season-ending injury and has been accused of all sorts of inappropriate conduct by multiple women. We're going to trade you, and we're going to get this guy because he's the guy that's going to save us."
Right.
over you. I mean, even when that move happened, when they signed Deshaun Watson, when they went and did that trade, I think everybody in sports knows Deshaun Watson has some talent.
Oh, yeah.
But you were like asking yourself, who's going to touch that leper right now? Who's going to go in there and grab that guy? But
Cleveland.
They did. Cleveland
All
did.
I got to say is keep it classy, Cleveland.
Yep.
Keep it classy.
Keep
yeah.
it classy, Cleveland.
And then what's he do when he gets to Cleveland? He gets hurt, and there's more,
and more
accusations
allegations,
made. So, it is.
Fits right in.
It is,
City.
Poster boy for the first fully guaranteed contract in NFL history. All Cleveland. If Cleveland wants to move on, it's a roughly $80 million cap hit for 2 more years if they want to move on.
Oof.
Which is why I think when the coach, everyone asked the coach after the games, is there going to be a quarterback change? He's like, no, we just got to do other things better. It's because his owner's saying, do you see what we paid for that?
Yeah.
You're not pulling him. I don't care if he's statistically the worst quarterback in the NFL. You're not pulling him. And then what'd they do the week after he gets hurt? Jameis Winston came in and they beat Baltimore. So you tell me what the problem is in Cleveland.
Well, ownership.
Yeah.
Ownership. I think that's where you find most of the problem in any sport is that there's a problem with ownership, either not willing to spend money or meddling too much in a team and not listening to the people that
Cowboys
should do that. Right there.
Well, I don't think in the Browns case that's the case, though, because the Haslam brothers are spending money on a new stadium. Not on players, it's a new stadium.
We're going to have this great stadium that's going to be empty because nobody's going to show up.
Here they have, and that's their stadium right there, which is on the shores of Lake Erie. It's right there.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful place. It's been around since, I think, 2000, so it would be 24 years old, somewhere around there. No, suddenly we need a new one. And it's in the suburbs, about 14 miles outside of Cleveland, but it has a dome.
Oh,
there's the difference. That's
the reason why they're losing their games. I think they should get Baker Mayfield back because I love those commercials that he did.
He's probably on Weird Conversation, probably top 5 athlete actor.
Yeah.
His commercials are always solid.
I like those commercials where it was his house.
He's going right now.
And he lived at the stadium.
They were funny.
I thought those were. Did you like those, Ned?
Ned thinks it's all hooey.
Ned, are you
just
in
play
that,
football?
Are you in that get off my lawn sort of mood today? Are you in one of those?
Today?
Yeah, today.
I'm always in that.
No, sometimes you're in better moods
Get
than
off
that.
my lawn.
Is it Halloween that bothered you? You had a lot of kids.
I'm not a big fan of Halloween. No.
You know?
Did you have a lot of trick or treaters?
I don't know because I wasn't there.
Fair enough. I'm surprised your house didn't get egged.
It's dark.
I could just see kids coming to Ned's house and ringing the door. Trick or treat! I'm going to give you a sports fact. Do you know who had the longest hitting streak in baseball history? Joe DiMaggio. No, get out of here, kid!
Get out of here! And no treats for you.
Yeah. Well, that's their treat. They've got that. They've got a bit of Ned Reynolds knowledge in their head.
Knowledge is its own treat.
Yeah, that's it exactly. When we come back, we'll talk about college football. It's Ned Talk, 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Yep, we're about 20 minutes away from the start of the Chiefs pregame show right here on 104.7 The Cave. Your home for the Kansas City Chiefs in Southwest Missouri. Ned Reynolds, Alex Scott,
The Cave wants to test your
Josh
Kansas City
Roberts.
Chiefs
What is
knowledge
that?
So you can prove you are the Chiefs fan of the week.
Yeah, it's Mike the
Oh,
intern.
it's Mike. Yeah, we're going to do that. Something weird happened there. I don't know what happened
Is he
there.
talking over you?
Yeah, he was there. I don't know. He just
He
barges
came in and stole my microphone.
just
and
barges in all over the
did
place.
an ad promo.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about college football for a minute. Our own Missouri State Bears, 15th in the country, Ned.
And they're a good team. They're legitimate. They've won 7 straight, go for 8 against Murray State. That's who they play this Saturday. It's the team that opened with Missouri, you might remember. And Missouri blew them out of the ballpark, as you knew would happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears don't do the same thing. This kid, Jacob Clark, who is their quarterback, he's 6'6", very angular kid, but he's a really, really good athlete and a good passer. 22 of 30 in the game against Southern Illinois, 2 touchdowns. He did have a pick in the game, but he's a kid who has it all the weapons, can throw, he can run. He's not a gazelle, but he can run. especially when they try to put the pressure on him and they break that first line of defense coming in. He's on his way. It's just a really well-balanced football team, and it's not just on the offense. These guys can play very good defense as well, perhaps not on the level of the Chiefs, but they're still a very good defensive team. They have 3 games remaining: Murray State, North Dakota State, and South Dakota State. And then that's it. They're finished for the season. They're ineligible for the playoffs because of the rule of changing divisions. But over and above that, and they know that. They knew that ahead of time. But wouldn't it be great to leave the Missouri Valley Conference as the champions? I think that would be
awesome.
Do they have a shot, Ned?
Oh, yeah, sure.
You think so?
Gosh, yes.
I mean, they're not professionals.
Well, still, the shot will be developed when they play South Dakota State and North Dakota State. North Dakota State's 9-time national champs. Yeah. South Dakota State's the 2-time reigning national champs. That's where the championship football is with those 2 teams. And one of them is here. One of the games, the South Dakota State team, is the final. That's the final game of the season. And the final game for the Bears in 1AA or FCS. Next year they move to Conference USA. Whole new schedule. Open up with Southern Cal.
Yeah,
who I never would have envisioned this. I've been here 50, 57, 58 years, whatever it is. Never would I have envisioned a Missouri State team going to the Coliseum in Los Angeles to play the Trojans, followed by Marshall, followed by Southern Methodist, which happens to be number 13 in America, coming here to play next year. Now that's a pretty brutal schedule, guys.
That is brutal.
Yeah, that is brutal. But, I mean, you do think that they have a shot against South Dakota and North Dakota?
Oh, they have a shot, sure. It's they can. The Bears can play. They can play with these teams. It's the opposition this year that they've beaten so far, other than Montana and the Ball State Ball Club, both of which the Bears could have won. The teams that they've been playing haven't really had the comeback circumstances that those teams did. Because the Valley overall may not be quite as strong as it has been, but they've thumped some teams pretty good. Now, Northern Iowa was a very good game 2 weeks ago, 49-42, and 49 points against UNI up at their home, the Unidome. That's commendable to say the least. But they did give up 42 points. All right, that's since been corrected, and the Bears can play very. They're just a well-balanced team, and they're a lot of fun to watch.
And let's get out and have some people show up to the games.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn to the Division I rankings, the college football rankings. We talked about this over the last couple of weeks about your Alabama Crimson Tide and about would they end up in the playoff picture. They moved up 3 spots by simply not playing. Isn't that nice? That's so great.
Look, I love Alabama. Obviously, I want them to be in the playoff, but no idle team should move up in the polls, in my opinion. You didn't play. Everybody should leapfrog you. Enough of it moves around week by week anyway.
Why did Notre Dame drop 2? I mean, they won, didn't they, or did they play?
Notre Dame was idle. They
dropped 2.
Right, so they dropped.
So that's where they get it at. That's so weird.
I don't know, but I mean, Alabama's big game is this weekend. If they beat LSU, they'll be in the top 12.
I would agree with that. I think that Alabama's going to be in the playoffs anyway, even if the LSU team is able to beat. The LSU is very inconsistent. They're a good football team, but they have been thumped. Well, Texas A&M went in there and whipped them up pretty good. So you take a look at what they have to offer, and the Tide may not be the Tide of the past, Josh, but they are still a very formidable football team.
The biggest matchup over the weekend was that Penn State-Ohio State game. Penn State won it. They were number 4 in the nation.
Ohio State won
that. And they moved up to number 3. Penn State has dropped back to number 6 in the rankings. I agree with Josh. I think this is all rigged. Ohio State is going to be in the playoffs no matter what happens.
I'll tell you right now what's going to happen is Indiana's going to beat Ohio State and knock them out.
I'd love to see it. Indiana's one of the coolest stories of the season so far.
Great
They're
story.
averaging what? They're averaging almost 40 points a game.
It's like Indiana looks really good. Ohio State, they're up there really high, and they do have the one loss, but it was a late close loss against the number 1 team in Oregon.
33-32 was the final score. It
so
could obviously have gone
to me,
either way.
if you lose a game like that and you were high ranked when it happened, maybe drop you a spot, because if you're number 3 and you lose to number 2, are you you're not in a close game? Does that mean you're not the number 3 team anymore?
And Alec, look what they did last week. They're behind 10-0 to Penn State on Penn State's home field, and come back and win the game.
So it's going to be interesting to watch if any of these teams can. Alabama's already weathered the probably 2 they can potentially weather if they want to get into that playoff. They might be able to get a third if just the the eyeball test the committee will look at and see who's the better squad there. But it'll be interesting to see if any of these teams pull away. Oregon's on top right now. I don't necessarily believe that Oregon's the best team in the country per se. It's a real tight race at the top with a lot of teams that can beat each other.
And nothing is predictable in this case, because those rankings are the media rankings.
Right.
The real committee rankings, the first of which is tomorrow night. That's when they'll release it, tomorrow night, and then every Tuesday from there on in until the final rankings of the top 12.
Let me ask you this, Ned, because this is another, I think, a great story for the first season of the playoffs. Do you see any way possible that number 18 Army ends up in the top 12 and in the playoffs?
I think it would be a bit of a pipe dream, in all honesty. I don't think they can get there. Their schedule, they play in the American Athletic Conference, which is not one of it's Division I, of course, but it is not one of the top conferences in the country. And beside Joe, they have a pivotal game coming up at Yankee Stadium. They'll play Notre Dame, and I do not see Army winning that one, although you never know. But look what Notre Dame did to Navy. Navy hasn't won since, and here's Army going in there and playing them. It'll be a tough assignment for Army, but even if they finish undefeated, I think it would be – I just don't think it'll happen. I don't think they would make the top 12.
Wouldn't that be a great story, though?
Well, it will be.
Army in the top 12
maybe in
the
time they will. But.
And that's what the 12-team playoff kind of allots for. There's those wild cards. If you're that smaller conference school that went undefeated, and you're over there banging your chest going, we can hang with the best of them, this 12-team playoff, they're going to say, okay, go prove it.
Right now it is Boise State. That's the club they're looking at as being the alleged non-entity coming in there. They are pretty good. I've watched them play, and they have a solid ball club. But are they good enough to play with the big-timers? That we may find out.
If they can give Genty the ball 30 times like they have been against those big schools,
That is right.
If they can get some running with him, they could. So there's only so much room for those little schools, though. Eventually it's like, okay, well, if you've got an Army and a Boise State that both look deserving, and you've got a 3-loss Alabama, but all 3, the Vandy loss is bad, but the other 2 losses are against big ranked opponents. If a third loss were to happen, then it puts the committee in a really tough spot of like, well, I know they're undefeated, but when you look at the body of work and you look at the talent on the teams, the eye test would tell you, well, Bama's probably still the better squad here. So it's a no-win situation. When it was the top 2, number 3 and 4 were mad. When we went to 4, the number 5 and 6 were mad. We've gone to 12. 13 and 14 are not going to be happy that they got left out. There's never going to be an amount that makes it perfect, but at least 12 gives more teams a shot.
Therefore, let's expand it to 16 teams, and everybody will be happy.
Basketball does it great. Let's just get 64 teams.
Let's do 2/3.
I agree with Coach K. They should just let everybody into the NCAA tournament.
And John Wooden was the first one to come up with that idea. And if they did, it really, you'd think, well, my God, they'll be playing to July the 4th. No, and it would expand it by about 1 week.
Yeah, one extra week. Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we'll do our picks for tonight's game. It's Ned Talk, 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Chiefs Radio Network.
Here are the Chiefs inactives for tonight. Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Dana, Nazee Johnson, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, C.J. Hansen, Ethan Driscoll, and Marlon Tuputu. I think that's how you say that. Ned, you can correct me if you like.
I can't correct you.
Okay. Those are your inactives tonight. Any of those guys not playing tonight change your mind about how you're going to pick the game?
No, heavens no. I like the Chiefs, and I'm going to pick them by a score of 27-10. 27-10. I think the Chiefs beat the Buccaneers by that large a margin.
What's the point spread on this one?
It is 9.
Okay.
Chiefs 9.
They're covering the spread then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you think, Alec?
I do think Kansas City wins. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just going to go with the script that's been, how is it still so close? This is Kansas City, for Christ's sake. But so Kansas City's going to win. They're going to look dominant. But it's going to be Kansas City 27, Tampa Bay 20.
Really? You think Tampa Bay's going to score that much?
That's just how it goes.
Pick six maybe mixed in there somewhere?
I was like, I feel like every week it's like, no way is it going to, no, what do you know? It's another one-score game. And that's just how it, I've seen it happen too many times to pick something else until they show me a different pattern.
Okay, what about you, Josh?
Anytime the point spread is that high, they're not going to cover it. Vegas got to make its money. So 24-17 Chiefs.
24-17 Chiefs. Okay, I like that. You know, I've been doing this thing all season long where I've gone against my gut. My gut tells me the Chiefs win big. I'm going with my gut. And I think they win big tonight, and I'm going to say 32-10.
Wow,
Chiefs. That's my pick. I know. There's a possibility. Hey, let me tell people really quickly that there is a tornado warning. There is a severe thunderstorm warning for our area that could produce tornadoes. So just be careful if you're out there, and just pay attention to the weather because it can get nasty really quickly. Ned, who's your player of the game tonight?
I will go with defense, and I'll go with Nick Bolton. I think he has a solid chance to really create havoc with this team. They're going to put pressure on the backfield. If somebody decides to run, there's Nick Bolton waiting for him. So, yeah, I'll take him.
What do you think, Alec, who you're choosing as your player of the game tonight?
Kareem Hunt. Tampa Bay is going to do everything they can to slow the game down and keep the score low, and they're going to invite Kansas City to run the ball all night long, and I think they do it with success.
How's that invitation going to come?
With two high safeties 15 yards back going, you're not going to throw it. Come on, run it right up the middle.
So you don't think it's going to be on cardstock paper or anything like that?
You know, I just, on this such
Maybe
short notice.
It's going to have filigree on it.
Yeah.
I know Baker's been practicing his calligraphy, so maybe they'll.
Exactly. All right. Josh, who's your player of the game tonight?
Carlos Carson.
Boy, are you going back into history with this one.
No, I'm going to say that DeAndre Hopkins has 2 touchdown passes. 2 touchdown catches tonight.
Passes.
Not passes, catches.
Real frisky.
Yeah. He's going to throw 2 touchdowns. No,
to himself.
He's going to have a couple touchdown catches.
I'm going to go with Travis Kelce tonight. I think that's a safe bet. I think Travis goes in there, he has a big game, and he slams his cell phone down to the ground.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, it says something like that.
He needs an old flip phone tucked into his sock, and if he scores a touchdown, that's coming out, and he's
take the fine.
He's spiking it.
Let's remind everybody very quickly that we will be on early next week. We'll be on Sunday at 10 a.m. as the Chiefs take on the Denver Broncos, and that game will be in Kansas City once again. So, interesting matchup. If we look ahead a little bit, how do you feel about that game, Ned?
Against the Broncos?
Yeah.
Well, they're playing in Kansas City, noontime game on a Sunday. The Broncos are good, and they've improved, but they aren't in Kansas City's caliber. The Chiefs roll right through them.
What do you think, Alec?
Kind of an inverse of tonight. I think Denver's got a strong defense that's played well throughout the year. That offense is growing. Bo Nix has looked good. There wasn't a lot going on in Denver at the start of the season. So if you look at where they're at right now, I think if you're a Bronco fan, you're saying this is the direction we want to be trending. But this is Kansas City's division, and they're not ready there.
Unless you play the Baltimore Ravens, and then it's not the way to go.
Then they don't look good at all.
Josh, what do you think?
Oh, I think that's going to be a better game than everybody thinks. I think Denver is playing pretty good football, so they need to watch out for that one.
All right, so we all agree that the Chiefs are 8-0 at the end of the night. We're not sure whether they'll be 9-0 after next week, but again, a reminder that we'll be on the air next Sunday, 10 a.m. right here on 104.7 The Cave. Thanks to Corbin Campbell, Mike the Intern, Brian Tyndall, and Nick Fury. Enjoy the game, folks.